tenido, Aries? ¿Problemas en el amor? ¿Tienes pareja y las cosas no están yendo muy bien? ¿O simplemente estás cansado de estar soltero?
Pues no te preocupes, los astros me han dicho que esta semana hay una oportunidad de oro que no deberías desaprovechar. ¿Qué hay del trabajo, las finanzas o el dinero? Tampoco te preocupes, las cosas irán mejorando esta semana. Igual ahorrando un poquito, verás.
Así que a brillar mi vida para los Tauros.
Hello, my lovely Pisces.
Aries, va a ser una semana en cuestión.
Millions of people consult a horoscope every day, either through newspapers or magazines, or through television, radio, and social networks. We all know our zodiac sign, and it is quite curious that we have assumed it as a personal data. What very few know is that actually the horoscope has very little to do with the universe. To know the origin of this divination system, we have to recognize that it is not something new. Throughout the history, different cultures have developed different versions. So let's go back in time to the different moments in which human beings interpreted what they saw when they looked up at the sky. Western, Chinese, Hindu, Celtic, Egyptian, and Native American cultures interpreted the stars, lunar phases, planets, and even the animals that surrounded them in different ways. There is evidence that ancestors were aware of celestial movements through recordings of lunar phases on animal bones. Observation and worship of the sun and moon were used to measure time and to time festivals and recreation. The study of these two celestial bodies led to the emergence of myths and interpretations, which would in time be extended to the planets and constellations. Celtic druids were known for being able to decipher omens and divine events from just the rustling of leaves. They performed the same kind of intense invocations and divinations by meditating upon the moon and its motions. Egyptians were constantly seeking answers from the night sky to give them advice, knowledge, and to determine their fate. They had the belief that their personality, life, and destiny were tied to the heavens. Native Americans used nature as their main source of inspiration. They associated nearly every aspect of life, including bird symbols, with living creatures around them. Animals are closely associated with birth months, and Native Americans believe that the time of the year a person was born will affect a person's characteristics. It is also important to know the different perspectives and knowledge from different experts in esotericism, psychology, and science.
There are several astrological disciplines. We can include traditions and disciplines such as Hermeticism, astrology, Kabbalah, Tarot, numerology, dream meaning, clairvoyance, I Ching, runes, even alchemy, and many others. But the best known are horoscopes. The horoscope is a forecast of a person's future, including a delineation of character and circumstances based on the positions of the stars and planets at the time of the person's birth. The zodiac is a circular area of the celestial sphere, divided in 13 constellations and 12 zodiac signs. All zodiac constellations represent living creatures. The signs of the zodiac are known by astrologers, but the zodiac is the name of the area of the sky located around the ecliptic, where the movements of the sun and the planets are observed. The path of the sun on the celestial sphere is the ecliptic. The zodiac signs are Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. In Western astrology, the date of the birth is the starting point of our lives. This starting point is an image of the position of the planets in relation to the 12 constellations of the zodiac. This position provides information to analyze or predict human, collective, or individual events.
Our studies do not follow the rules of current science, but it is just as valid and can help many people. A series of mathematical calculations are carried out with respect to our birth chart. This is the position of the planets, the Sun and the Moon according to the exact place and time of birth. These are mathematical calculations from the geocentric view. However, the implications on personality or the reading made of the data are subjective. In other words, it depends on the vision that each astrologer makes on the person's birth chart. Astrology teaches that the day we are born also gives us characteristics that can influence our future. This is because each day is ruled by a certain planet. We must know more about the energy that we handle or that was conferred on us, since this brings us closer to abundance, love, or health in our life. In addition, there are some arguments in favor of the astrology made by my scientist. For example, Dr. Percy Seymour states that the revolving planets orchestrate solar activity and geomagnetism, where the magnetic signals are perceived by the human brain.
Astrology does not follow the scientific method, as it does not experiment, nor does it analyze the results, nor does it verify them. We can see the difference with astronomy. While they had a common origin in antiquity, over the centuries, astronomy was based on the scientific method, which allowed it to evolve and acquire new knowledge. For example, astronomy could prove that there are two other constellations that should be two more signs of the zodiac. The first is Ophiuchus. It is located between Scorpio and Sagittarius. It is believed that the Babylonians already knew of its existence, but that they eliminated it so that the number is 12, as well as the months of the year, that is a half-truth. The second is Ceres, and its period is very short, only a few hours between March 27 and 28. How can you calculate the influence of planets and stars on people if you discard some determining factors in your philosophy? There are other answers that astrology has had trouble solving. For example, the case of twins. It is about two people who are born with minutes of each other in the same place. In other words, the position of the stars in their births is similar, and surely their astral charts are the same. However, twins have very different personalities.
Personality is defined as a relatively stable pattern of behavior, thought, and emotion over time and through the different situations we experience. This pattern explains how we perceive reality, the judgments we make about it, or the way we interact with the environment, being partially inherited and partly acquired and later molded through life experience. Our personality is not defined by the day we are born. In fact, it is forged over time and by our context. Even if two or more people were born on the same day or in proximity, if their contexts and experiences are different, their personalities will not be similar. To establish a chronology of the stages of personality development, it is interesting to start with the classification of the main vital stages. The first moments. At the moment a baby is born, we cannot consider that it has a marked personality, since there have been no concrete experiences that make it be, think, or act in a certain way. However, it is true that as the days go by, we see how the child has a tendency to behave in a certain way. Childhood. As the subject grows, he or she gradually develops different cognitive and physical capacities that will allow her to grasp reality and begin to try to understand how the world works and how their own being can influence and participate in it. This stage is characterized by the acquisition of values, beliefs, and norms from abroad in an initially imitative way and with real critical overtones. Puberty and adolescence. It is a vital moment characterized by the need to differentiate. The number of environments in which the person participates is increased, as well as the number of people with whom they interact, encouraging them to experience different roles that will teach them what they like and what is expected of them. There is an enhancement of the search of social bonding and the first relationships appear. In this stage, self-esteem tends to vary due to insecurities and self-discoveries. Adulthood. It is considered that it is from adolescence when we can speak of proper personality, having already forget a relatively stable pattern of behavior, emotion, and thought. This personality will stay varied throughout life, but broadly speaking, the structure will be similar unless some very relevant event happens for the subject. Elderly. Although in general the personality remains stable, the arrival of old age supposes a progressive experience of situations such as the loss of skills, work activity, and loved ones, which can greatly affect our way of relating to the world. There is a tendency to decrease extraversion and self-esteem.
The word suggestion comes from the French suggestion, which means to evoke or make you think of something. In the context of psychology, when we speak of suggestion, we understand that this idea tries to modify in some way the experience of the person, her thoughts, feelings, memories, and behaviors, so that you understand it better. If I ask you to raise your hand, I am only giving you an instruction. But if I ask you to imagine that your hand becomes very light and then some balloons are pulling it up, there I am suggesting or evoking some sensations. If we also make you feel that your hand rises by itself automatically, then we will have achieved a successful suggestion. And something similar happens when reading horoscopes, because they give you a supposed prediction of the near future and an invocation of present and past events. When a person faithfully believes in the authority of the author, it is suggested to relate what he reads with what he lives. And in some cases, it can also affect his future decisions, making it coincide with what he read or heard.
We call confirmation bias or confirmatory bias the tendency to favor, search, interpret, and remember information that confirms one's beliefs or hypotheses, giving disproportionately less consideration to possible alternatives. It is a type of cognitive bias and a systematic error of conductive reasoning. People show this tendency when they selectively gather or recall information, or when they interpret it biased. The effect is strongest when emotional content and firmly rooted beliefs are touched. They also tend to interpret ambiguous evidence to support their existing position. Scientific studies have shown that people tend to identify with very vague personality descriptions if we are told that they describe us specifically. This is known as the Forer effect. Bertram R. Forer was a psychologist who had his students fill out a personality test. Later, he gave them a supposed description of the personality of each one, asking them to rate from 0 to 5 to what extent they felt identified with it. The average result was 4.2. In fact, Forer had given everyone the same description based on horoscopes. The text included extremely vague statements, such as, even though you have flaws, you are usually able to compensate them, or sometimes you are outgoing and sociable, but other times you are introverted, cautious, and reserved. Other similar studies have shown that people tend to identify more with descriptions of this type than with the results of psychological tests supported by science. This is because we more easily believe what we consider to be experts are saying, and because ambiguous sentences allow us to interpret descriptions subjectively, projecting personal meaning to their statements. Probably also influencing the fact that in general horoscopes tell us positive things, while the same does not always happen with serious personality tests. Apophenia is the experience of seeing patterns, connections, or both in random events or in meaningless data. Apophenia is the reason why people still believe in superstitions and astrology. In fact, the famous American psychologist Frederick Skinner conducted an experiment that explained the possible origin of superstition. In the experiment called The Superstition of the Pigeon, the famous American psychologist took 8 hungry pigeons and placed them in a box, randomly dropping food on them without any relation in their behavior. Skinner found that the pigeons associated the delivery of food with the casual actions they had been performing as it was delivered, such as shaking their heads or walking in circles, and that they consequently continued to perform the same actions. Skinner's conclusions were that pigeons believed to be influencing food delivered with their behavior when in fact they were not. The purpose of this documentary is not to judge your beliefs. In fact, we're only trying to give you some information. There's nothing wrong with having magical thoughts, but it's quite curious to know our own minds.